So I wanted to showcase my Overlord deck to y'all tonight. It just honestly feels like the best ride line Dragon Empire has to offer right now as of set 2, just because of the grade 1 and grade 2's abilities are, in my opinion, just very strong in terms of card advantage, letting you add any grade 1 from your deck to your hand and then giving you essentially a free attacker just for playing the deck the way it was intended, or a free rear guard per se. But let's get to the profile. So I'm running max copies of Dragonic Overlord. This deck really, it's just so grindy because the numbers you're hitting are usually like 26, 18 on the Vanguard swings, and your rears are normally like 25, 15 on the low ends, or like 35 on a Persona Ride turn. But you really, again, you need the Persona Ride in this deck just because it takes you so long to win the game. That's my only complaint with this deck. This is a grind deck. It's a control deck. But my only complaint is it takes you so long to win the game because you don't really make those power numbers. Like with bar boosting one of your grade 2s, the biggest number without Persona Ride you can make is 28. But speaking of the attackers, again, you're maxing out copies on Nahalem. He's your best grade 2. He enables your Vanguard to attack without boost on a rear guard. Like, let's say they have an intercept and you're attacking one of their rear guards. A boost because he gives 5k boost to both of them. That boost allows you to swing without them even having the opportunity, unless you're playing against Nirvana, you even have the opportunity for them to try and intercept for a 1 to pass. Because that's happened to me before, like when I didn't have the resources to expend to attack, so I just swung for like 13, and they intercepted for 1 to pass, and they can just mess up you from you getting your ability off, and that's just the most important thing of this deck because that's what this deck is based around. And then we're playing 4 copies of Berserk Dragon. Again, he's just another key attacker in the deck. It swings for 15 by itself, and it can get of any grade 2 or less rear guard. So it's just really a key card. This is a control deck after all, so it's just really good at clearing boards. Like, you're gonna attack the front row with Overlord, and this just picks up any other back row, or let's say they had another interceptor. It's just really good at attacking, or it's just really good at cleaning up the board. Let's move this down. Alright, wait. Alright. I just want to make sure you guys can still see the cards. And then for your rear guard booster / attacker, you're maxing out copies of Bar. Again, he's just really good at making those 28k lines, 38k lines on Persona Ride turns, or a 23k attacker on Persona Ride turns, or just a 13k attacker. Again, really good. I wish I had more cards like him. I would run more of him if possible, just because it's a simple ability, but it's just so strong in this deck. And then we're running 3 Gojo, your countercharge engine. It's a needed card in this deck. That's your main Vanguard booster. It lets you get off your Berserk Dragon abilities and your Overlord abilities without having problems, and your ride line does cost a counterblast. So it just makes sure that you're able to do all your effects without any problems at all, or just resource managing. And then I play 2 Tenchestead. The reason that I actually cut a copy of the Gojo to play another copy of Tenchestead in this deck was because I feel like Overlord is the best deck right now to use this card in. It's a consistency card. It helps you get to your key pieces, which are your Dragon Knight Nahalem and your Dragonic Overlord. Now, how you could use it to get Nahalem is, like, let's say your opponent either critted you, they gave you 2 damage, on your grade 2 ride-up turn, or let's say they rushed you, which means they attacked the Vanguard, they swung with a rear guard, and you're at 2 damage. You're going to use the first counterblast to get any grade 1 you want from your deck, which is most likely a PG. That's what makes this deck so tanky, is just because the ride line is able to fetch a PG at will for a counterblast 1, which is so good. And then you're just gonna call this behind your Vanguard. You're gonna swing for 18. They're most likely not gonna block it, because they'll either block for 1 to pass. The most they could do is 1 to pass, because they're not gonna expend 2 cards to make this not hit. Because if they do, I would just swing Vanguard next turn and see if they'll expend 2 more cards for my Vanguard not to hit. But they're not gonna. They're most likely gonna let this hit. You're gonna counterblast 1, and you're gonna get another one of these guys to your hand, and it just helps with the setup for next turn. Or let's say you don't have Persona Ride in your hand. This helps you fetch Persona Ride at will, just because your Vanguard's ability makes it so your opponent can't guard their rear guard attacks, or there are rear guards that are getting attacked. So it makes sure that this ability pops off, so you're able to fetch extra copies of Dragonic Overlord to your hand, so you can guarantee those Persona Rides. So, and then the 8 cards in my deck that I expended for Soul Resource Management were these. 4 of Togashirashi. Oh, this feels like the best deck to run this card in right now. At least in my opinion, at least, the best Dragon Empire deck to run this card in. Just because it's so important that you're able to at least Soul Blast 1 every turn to get your Vanguard to that power threshold. Or if you have 2 of these, Soul Blast 2 to get your Vanguard 23, 33 on a Persona Ride turn by itself, which is just really good, especially if you want to stack triggers on your Vanguard when you do swing at their Vanguard. So it's just very important to maximize 4 copies of these. This helps when you discard it for your ride line, when you discard it for your Vanguard's ability. It just helps keep key guarding pieces or other pieces you have in your hand, versus throwing away a piece or throwing away a trigger, which happens to me a lot, where if you want to keep your combo in hand, especially in Barrel Magnus, if you want to keep your combo in hand, most of the time you have to discard a 15k or 20k trigger, or even Persona Ride at times, just because it's very imperative that you keep key cards in your hand. But this deck is just so good at doing so much with so little. If you have your Vanguard and the Nahalem you get from riding up, open counterblast, that's all you need. That's literally all you need to have a decent turn. Anyways, the other card we're playing just to maximize our ability to push cards into Soul is 4 Penetrate Dragons. At first I wasn't running this card because I didn't believe in it. I didn't believe it was very useful. I played around with it, and there was a lot of times I was just pitching this card because I didn't really have a good opportunity to use it. But I am maxing out on it now just because I'm playing it solely for the fact that I want to feed Soul. I want to feed Soul, and I want to catch up on damage pushes if possible. Because, like I said, this deck's main problem is it doesn't make power lines like Nirvana, or it doesn't make like consistent like 30k or 33k lanes like Eugene does. This deck like does 18, 26, 15, 25, most 28, 38 on Persona Ride turns on a rear guard column with a booster. So the extra damage really does come in handy if you're able to actually push through with it. But again, I'm mostly running it because it's a Soul Charge card, and this deck needs Soul. Or Nahalem needs Soul. It's just very important that you're able to power up your Vanguard and have rear guards to attack with, or give triggers to. Because most of the time, the way this deck works, because you only really have 1 booster for the rear guards, you're just swinging with a front row line. Especially if you're playing against Bruce, you're just swinging with a front row line because you don't want to give them the opportunity of free Soul Charge. Free Soul Charging, free pluses. But getting onto the triggers / guard, you're maxing out on 4 PGs, 1 over trigger. Playing the Dragon Empire over trigger just because this deck feels like it combos the best with the Dragon Empire over trigger. I've checked this. Swing at a rear guard, you restood your Vanguard, and then you still have the ability to proc your Vanguard's ability to restand and swing again. So it's just really good. Again, it's really good at damage pushes. This deck is a grind deck. It's so long. It's good at what it does because it needs minimal resources to achieve it, but because it can't expend a certain amount of resources for more like bigger columns. Like if I was playing maybe instead of Tenchestead, if I was playing N10 to give my rear guards an extra 10k power, but I'd want to play more copies of N10, so I'd probably cut this down to 2 and play like N10 at 3. But I value the consistency of getting my pieces, or consistency of seeing rear guards in Persona Ride versus just the 10k buff. And then we're playing 3 front triggers. We're only playing 3 front triggers because I really just wanted to max out on the crits. We're playing 8 crit. And the reason we're playing 8 crits in this deck, well, let me just finish showing them off. 8 crit and, let me put this here. 8 crit and 4 heal. Now the reason that we're playing the 8 crits versus just the 7 and 4 front lineup is there's a lot of times, like, again, you really need to close up because of like how these numbers aren't that strong in compared to the other Dragon Empire decks. It's just very important that you close the gap between you and your opponent. Like this can't make like 35, 45, 48k lanes like Bruce. Like the biggest lane you're making is like 35. Or the biggest lane you can make with the Vanguard is like 43. So like it's really important that you max out with the crits. Like there's a lot of times early game, like you know how people wanna, you know, guard you early game. I would commit a booster and swing with the Vanguard and I check a crit, and that's just yes, guaranteed damage that gets my opponent closer to, or gets me closer to victory. So that's my theory on it. A friend of mine changed my mind about it. At first I was very apprehensive. I was like, oh, why would I cut my guarding? You know, but this deck is already so tanky that you can afford to run the 8 draw triggers. Not 8 draw triggers. The 8 critical triggers. I would honestly even try to run draws, even though I hate draws. Draws are the worst trigger in the game, in my opinion. I would even try to run draws, in my opinion. I would even try to run draws, but this deck already, like, it cycles through so fast. There was times, because it's so grindy, it takes me so long to win with this deck. That's the only thing I don't like about this deck. That, you know, you would be close to decking out. You would literally be close to decking out. So that's one of the main reasons I wouldn't run draws. And the fronts do come in handy. Again, you're making 15, 25k lanes if you're not Persona riding. So that's just very imperative. But anyways, that's my Overlord deck profile. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me how you guys think about it down below. If you don't like it, just tell me why. Or if you don't like the video, dislike it, but just let me know. Anyway, peace.